Well, for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm the Executive Director of the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits. We're the largest in the state coalition of health and human service agencies working primarily on public policy and advocacy issues that impact the health and human service sector. We do a lot of stuff and do a lot of advocacy. I think some of our biggest efforts was we worked alongside many of you around the minimum wage issue. We've done a lot of work in the juvenile justice system. I think one of our biggest wins was for them to not build a larger ranch. I just have to say that they wanted to build 24 more beds, and right now the ranch is down to 24 beds, so they've cut the ranch in half. So it's always nice to be right as well, and so that was one of our big issues, as our motto was, if you build it, they will come, and if you don't, guess what happened? It went the other way. So we were very happy with that. We do lots of advocacy around funding and a lot of issues, but today I'm here to talk to you about advocacy. We are going to use a case example today that Step Up is working on related to the city of Sunnyvale, so we're going to focus on that, but whatever we talk about will work, whether it's in Palo Alto, you'll do the same activity, or in the city of San Jose, or wherever you are. But Step Up will be working around two issues over the next year, the anti-payday lending and minimum wage will go forward to the city of Sunnyvale over the next few years. I started my advocacy work within the city of Sunnyvale, so many years ago, and I started a program there. So I'm somewhat familiar with Sunnyvale, but not necessarily all the people that are currently on the council, but we're going to talk about that. So what I really want to share is that nonprofits, they have a long history of advocacy. So I know you are all here because you're advocates, but I want to empower you all to know that being an advocate and in the nonprofit sector really goes together. Some of the major national movements that were really spurred by nonprofits to sort of put your head around that was Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Before then, you could drive and drink, and it wasn't a problem. And a group of women came together, formed a nonprofit, and as you know now, the laws are very tight. But that was really started by a nonprofit. Seatbelt laws. I don't know if many of you are maybe younger than me, but my mother's seatbelt law was this. Yeah. Does anyone remember that? Mm-hmm. So that was my seatbelt law. But now everyone has a seatbelt law. Again, a national movement started by a nonprofit. And of course, many of our anti-tobacco laws also started by nonprofits. So small groups of people coming together to change something that they really believe in really happens mostly in the nonprofit sector. And so the work that you all are doing around minimum wage and anti-payday lending, it's not a national movement everywhere yet, but it's because of people like you who organically get it to grow that it moves bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I just really want to acknowledge the work that all of you that are doing in Step Up and really realize that these are the kind of movements that really change the conditions of people's lives over a long period of time. And so sometimes it's easy to get discouraged because the steps aren't always so easy, and sometimes they're not very quick. But if you just remind yourselves, well, I remind myself that my mother's seatbelt law was this, and now my daughter wouldn't think of getting in the car without strapping everyone in the car. And so really, in time, that's not that long. But I'm sure that those that were working on it, there was a lot of obstacles that they had in their way. The auto industry, I don't think, signed up right away. I'm pretty sure about that. I don't think Congress immediately was willing to change those laws. But you can see how a small group of people can change a whole way in which society thinks. And these two issues that you're really addressing now, the minimum wage and anti-payday lending, change the conditions of poverty. And it's those policy issues that we're working on to change conditions of poverty that truly will make a difference. I'm not going to cover all the legalities of advocacy, but I'm going to just remind you of two. Who knows what nonprofits can advocate for? Yep.
Nonprofits can advocate for policy positions, including legislation and ballot initiatives, but cannot advocate for the election of certain individual people.
That's correct. You're absolutely correct.
And
so, and she's from the Law Foundation. What an excellent lesson that would be. I do want to remind you all, if you are with a nonprofit organization and you are sitting in this room, that I'm going to assume that you all in your 990s are filling out the forms related to advocacy. If you're not, we're going to partner with the Law Foundation later this year to make sure you are, because we think that many of you are not. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands because I've looked at many of your statements and I know you're not doing it. And so if you're advocating, if you're putting something in your newsletter that says we support the minimum wage, if you're putting something in your newsletter that says we're supporting payday lending, if you sent it to staff, if you told your board, you got to put it on the form for the 990. There's nothing wrong with that. There's lots of ways you can do it, but most of our agencies are not using that election form. We're going to change that this year by doing more education for you all, including board members who say, oh, no, we don't want to do that. That would impact our tax status. But if you're doing advocacy, please fill out the form within your 990. And stay tuned for more. I don't know, James and I are working on it. We kind of start and then we stop, but we're going to do it this year. But if you're not doing it, we do encourage you to do so. So when we when we say, okay, we want to take on an issue like the minimum wage, somebody comes to us and says, we'd like your support for minimum wage. It doesn't work like this. Oh, I think that's a good idea, let's go. That's not how it works for us. We do a number of steps first. And one of them is that we have an internal policy within SVCN on how we determine if we're going to take a position. You all should also, I'm sure Step Up has their own policy, but we encourage each agency to have one so that you would know what you're going to say yes to, and we always think it's important on what you're going to say no to. So that if somebody comes to you with something that fits within your mission, that would be something that you would take a position on, maybe active. And maybe there's an issue that some friends of yours are working on, but it's not really core to what you do. You should really have a discussion and some criteria with your boards on how those policies are implemented. But I'm going to sort of walk through how we start our own policy decision-making within our organization. And many of you benefit from that because usually what happens is the council takes does all this, and then we send it to you all and we say, will you join us? But let me just walk through what we do first. First, we do research. So what does that mean? What would the minimum wage policy mean? What do the experts say about it? What's the research and data show about it? Who's the opposition? Who's for it? Very important. You want to know the pros and the cons. Pros are kind of easy sometimes. The cons are a little bit harder. But if you don't know the cons, you can't address them in why you're supporting the pros. It's also really good to know the who's. We really like to, we spend a lot of time on the who's. Who's supporting it? So sometimes you'll find out a whole bunch of your friends are over here, and then you find out a whole bunch of your friends are over here. At least you know, if you take a position one way or the other, that these friends are going to love you. These friends might not like you so much for a while, not forever, for a while. So we do this first. We first find out what is it, who's supporting it, and why. And then we have to have a mission fit. Really important for us. We do not take positions on the arts. We do not take positions on the environment. We do not take positions on animals. We know that. For us, it has to be in the health and human services sector. That's pretty broad. But for some of you, you serve a certain group of people, housing or mental health or whatever it is. So for us to take a position, it has to have a mission fit. And then the next thing we say is, how big? How much? How much are we going to do? So sometimes it's real easy. We support it, just lend our name. That's it. I'm done. Don't do another thing. That's rare for us. Mostly it's how big. Are we going to ask all of our members to support? Are we going to email it out early and often about it? Are we going to try to get people to call and be part of the phone banking for it? How big? So you kind of want to know, how much you're going to do here. A little bit. I'm in on this. So Step Up has lots of different things, right? Maybe you're all in on minimum wage. And maybe for payday lending, I'm going to lend you my name, but I'm probably not going to show up at the hearings. Good to know. Good to know. You should know. Because otherwise you're emailing 500 people and only 50 care. So how much? How big? Who's in? And then you tell your partners. Who are the partners that you're working with? So, minimum wage. Working partnership. Lead on the minimum wage. Everybody knows. Everything we did, we told them. We breathed on the minimum wage, we told them. We wrote something, we told them. Because the lead partner, is looking at the whole issue. So payday lending, lead partner, right? Who is it? Law Foundation. They need to know everything. Everything you do. Because it fits in with everything they're doing. And if you're off doing this, and they don't know, that could impact the next meeting they have with that person. So if you meet with John Jones, and John Jones tells you, there is no way I'm going to support the minimum wage. I don't believe in it, blah, blah, blah. If you don't tell your partner that, the next person that goes to meet with John Jones, I wouldn't want to be that person. Not fair, right? So you want to make sure you've done your research, your pros and your cons, who's in, who's out, how does it fit your mission, and you want to know how the lead partner, and make sure that all that communication is happening there. Sometimes there's a little subgroup that we go to and we meet all about what we're doing. Because there's lots of efforts related to advocacy, right? There's telling your own constituents, right? You're going to tell your own folks. Your own folks. That's your internal. You're going to tell your external people. And then, of course, there's the media, right? Because it's not really happening if the media doesn't cover it. Just so you know. Just so you know. I'm just going to keep saying, just so you know. If they haven't covered your issue, it's not really happening. So it's really happening at Cubberley, right? On the home.
Yeah.
That's really happening, right? We're all reading the paper. We all know about it. But it wasn't really happening 2 years ago when I guess those neighbors went to start talking because the media wasn't covering it, right? So you know you've hit the big time when the media starts to cover it. Other than that, it's just a lot of talk. And there's the good and the bad, and we'll get to that. So you also need to know in your partner, so let's say you've walked through this in your organization, you're in, and you're in a lot. Who's your point person? So like today I've noticed there's like 5 or 6 people here from Catholic Charities. Okay, so I can tell you that if I was the partner running it, I want to know who's in charge. And I don't want to talk to 6 of you anymore, only one. And I think that's a challenge for some of you because you don't do it that way. But if you're leading advocacy and I don't know who the point person is, it's not working for me. So you've got to have one. And so for some of you, there's some of you who have many people here today from one organization. I heard that going through. And that's great. But when you get to this point, who is it? Because if it's Greg, that's great. But then I'm only talking to Greg now. But then if Almaz calls me, did Almaz talk to Greg? Do I have to now circle back with Greg? Da-da-da. No. Don't do that to me. So when you're working on an advocacy issue, you've got to have your who, your how much, and you've got to define who your point person is. So these are some of the key elements to moving policy from A to B to C. For us, moving a policy, we say it takes a long time. Sometimes it takes 3 years. That's my normal number. Minimum wage went a lot faster than that. Payday lending, I think we're way past the 3 years now, right? I don't think we've really hit total success, right? But that's not unusual, so I don't want you to get discouraged. It takes a long time to build the research, the who's, get their support, make sure people are in, and then begin to move the issue. Yeah.
I see you have later on how to move your agenda forward. But
we're going to do that. Yeah, we're going to do one together.
But just as we're talking the minimum wage, it seemed to just flounder until the one professor at San Jose State made it almost like a class project. Is there, in your moving agenda forward, is there going to be kind of like
you got to have a key. You got to have a key leader, right?
Okay.
Somebody's responsible. But at some point, this key leader moved it over to working partnerships because it became too big for that class. It became too big, moving, and we're going to walk through all the elements soon on what it takes to move, who you know, how you know them, how you're going to talk to them, and all of that. But somebody's got to be a key leader. But sometimes I always think it works way better if it's a coalition of leaders that are working together. Measure A, good example, coalitions of people, et cetera, et cetera. Hard to move it all by your little lonesome, because to move policy by one, really tough. I don't think if the seatbelt law, if only one person talked about it the whole time, we'd have a national law. They had to find more partners and more partners and more partners. So does everybody understand sort of the steps here? Know what your issue is. Get your pros and cons. And then the most important thing is you've got to have your communication strategy. So you support it. Do you know what to say about it? So you want to make sure everybody is on point with 3 things. I love that number, 3. So if one person says, well, I'm for the minimum wage because it's going to reduce poverty, and another person says, I'm for minimum wage because youth need better paying jobs because now they support their family, and another person says, then pretty soon the electorate goes, well, what's the real point of the minimum wage? So we think you should have your communication strategy and your talking points. Everybody's going to say, it lifts you out of poverty. Everybody's going to say this, and everybody's going to say this. Now, if you want to add a 4 because they're still listening to you, great. But usually 3 is a good number. What are the 3 things you're going to tell them about payday lending? What is the 3 things you're going to tell them about the issue at Coverly School? 3 things. After that, any of you have kids and they start rambling on, well, Mom, I'm going to go here, and then then I'm going to pick up Jane, and then we're going to go there, and then we're going to be, and then eventually I'm going to be spending the night at some. You ever get lost? Three things. Just tell me three things. You're going where? What time are you going to be home? And is your phone going to be on, right? So it's the same thing here. Three things. What are the three things you're going to tell people about the issue that you're moving forward? You need to know a lot of things, right? And maybe if you're a housing person, you're going to add a fourth thing, which is, and for us in the housing community, it means X. But whether you're in housing, or you're in mental health, or you're in safety net, you're all saying the same three things. Like, the stats are. It's not really true that you lose businesses when they raise the minimum wage. It's just not true. It hasn't happened in San Jose either, by the way. Isn't it nice to be right? What are the three things you're going to say? And a stat is a good one to add. Nationally it shows that businesses really don't leave town. Of course, now it's a good time to remind people that they haven't left San Jose either, because you're going to Sunnyvale, right? So it's always good to be right. It's kind of good to be right on the stats. So I think it's good to have a stat and maybe two other points, but something they're going to remember. I always say it's really good if after I have a conversation with somebody, like we're doing this whole movement around girls in gangs, right? And after every meeting, we have a talking point. And we ask them to tell one other person that day. Well, girls in gangs moved in 3 months. I never seen anything move so fast. Because we had everybody out there telling one more person about what's happening to girls in gangs. But you can't give them too much information. So one meeting we used, the pregnancy rate is higher. Teen pregnancy rate is higher in gang-impacted neighborhoods than in non-gang impacted neighborhoods. Rape is higher in gang, that's a sad one. Higher, etc. Just two things. Well, more people would call, and more people would call. Tell me more about that. So those are good things. You want to spread the information out wider so people are curious to learn something more. That it sparks their interest, that when they go home for dinner, they want to tell somebody, hey, you know what I heard today? I heard, my husband was at a meeting the other day, I heard about this Coverly problem, right? Oh man, that's better than the media. That's one-on-one conversation, right? So it's in the paper, but then they were someplace and somebody said, this lady was talking about what happens to her. And this is what she said. Oh, good story. Good talking point. Good talking point. You want to really have a strong communication strategy that's not so laden with jargon, but just people talking to people. I always say, I want a talking point that I can use with my mother. Right? One that she'll get it right away in my 5-minute daily check-in with her. And so this is a really important piece as you walk through all of this. Now what are we going to say? Okay. Anybody have any questions before we actually walk through and plan a strategy? We're good? Does any of this ring true for anybody? Some of you have done this for a long time. Bob, this can't be news for you. Does anybody have an example how any of this has worked for them in the past? Yep.
Downtown church has banded together to work with Valley Transportation Authority to create a lower cost bus pass for poor people. It took 3 years. Everything he said, hundreds of meetings. It just finally passed. So now, for the next 2 years, there'll be a pilot study where 1,000 people.
Isn't that great? And you had to do research, right? Because you had to convince them it was a problem. You had to develop your pros and cons. You had to know who to talk to. This is the part where people don't really spend enough time. How far in are we? Took a little longer than you thought?
Yeah. Well, we started with about 80 people working on it and ended up with 6. People just couldn't stand it for 3 years.
Yeah.
Continuing on the fight, but finally we won. So
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to let you all know. Hang in. It takes 3 years. That's what it takes. Sometimes you can get it done shorter than that, but not a lot. You're on 2 years at Cupperley, so you got a year more to go. You had a key leader? Did you have a lot of partners?
Actually, a lot. There's a big collaboration. I think she could speak a little better because I'm early into it. It wasn't my main.
A lot of partners. You got to have a lot of
I
partners.
think the big issue with our group, and I was going to ask about, is because it's all voluntary, it doesn't have that like nonprofit or that church like central leader, and it's really hard then to give point people because people have full-time jobs, people have children, people have lives, you know. So it's been really hard to, you know, get that coalition of point people who have the ability to take that responsibility because it's so grassroots.
It is hard. But if you could partner with somebody who's got a little staff to give you, like a church, maybe a standard meeting location, that begins to help coalesce it. Volunteer groups are hard for that reason, because it takes a long time. And stamina is the name of the game. My husband always tells me when I come home frustrated, you know, because sometimes it's really taken a long time, he'll go, it's their goal.
Yeah.
Don't let them get you down, right?
And part of that dynamic is to be able to identify the nonprofits that could be a leader in supporting
Yeah.
and then eventually take it over.
Yeah, identify those key partners. But remember that for government, they're here, whether they change the rule or they don't. You know, they're coming to work today and they're going to be there in 5 years. So they don't have to move as fast as you see the urgent need. And so I do have that quote. I remind myself sometimes when I'm sitting in a meeting thinking, this isn't going so well. And I'll say, oh, that's right. It's their goal to get more information. It takes them longer. I need more research. Oh, you know, you're going to have to get back to me on that, and we can't meet again for another month. Has anybody, you know, I don't know, that kind of stuff happens all the time, you know. Can you bring me some more examples of that? You know, I don't really see the problem the same way you do. Well, we're going to have to take that to committee, and that committee meets, and the agenda's not set till, and that's the way it goes, guys. You guys are laughing because you've heard this stuff before, right? Yeah, well, just in your head say, oh, that's right, she said that was their goal. But then my next quote that I always remember is, but I'm going to get up and do it again tomorrow. So you got to remember the second quote, which is, I'm going to get up and do it tomorrow because I'm going to be here doing it for a long time. So let's take an advocacy issue and walk it through together. So I'd like you to break up into small groups to begin to work on. We're going to start with this one, which is the policy body matrix. So you all are going to the city of Sunnyvale next with 2 issues. So you got to know a lot about Sunnyvale. Like a lot. And I want to know how much you know. So you're going to break up into small groups, maybe like 5 or 6. It doesn't have to be too small of a group. And I want to know who you know. And so we're going to walk it through. You're going to know who are they? Do you know any of them? I want to know how many of you even know the names of all 7 council members. Do any of you know them personally? And Pat Plant, if you don't have some answers for this, I'm going to be very upset with you. How many other people in your organization know them? So who else lives in Sunnyvale that you know? So you all are going to for sure put Naomi, right? Who else do you know? Marie Bernard, just to give you some help if you didn't know. Who else in this coalition is from Sunnyvale? How aware are those people that you're going to Sunnyvale next? Okay? And then how do you connect with people? Okay. And then I want you to make a guess from the list of the people that you know from the city of Sunnyvale. Who do you think would be your best champion there? Who would be your best? And so I'm going to say that if you're talking about payday lending and minimum wage, going to be the same people. And if you go 1 month to talk about minimum wage and the next on payday lending, you can probably weave them together in some way. We'll talk about that more. But it's still going to be the same. Probably not your most conservative council member is not going to be your champion. So I want you to break up into small groups, and we're going to talk about Sunnyvale. You would do the same thing in Palo Alto, or in Santa Clara, or at the city of San Jose, and then if any of you are like really good, if you know who the coalition is that are those seven members, and there's a coalition in Sunnyvale, who is it? And then I'm going to just give you a little reminder. They have an election in November. Okay? So will those same people be there? So kind of important, because you might not get this done by November. Since we talked about it, it doesn't take, I think you've already been talking to Sunnyvale for quite a few months already, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not like you just showed up. I think minimum wage has been moved to next year's study session, so that's how they got rid of that. So you're going to be there a while. Just so you know. You're going to be in Sunnyvale for a while. So it's really good for you to know everything you can about Sunnyvale. And who do you know? So let's start with this one, and we're going to spend about 6 minutes.
I'm confused on the project. Did you have a specific, because
Yeah.
it says which agency
So-
it owns.
Are you looking at this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So on the first one, it says we're going to do the Sunnyvale City Council. I'm letting you know there's 7. Okay. How many of them do you know? How many of those 7 members do you know?
Okay, but for a specific advocacy of a thing?
At this point, it doesn't really matter what the issue is, but we're talking about payday lending and minimum wage. Those are the two we're going to talk
That's
about.
what it was.
Okay. But so for me, I'll do it for me, and then you all do it for yourself. There's 7. I know 1 really, really well. How many other people in this organization? How many members and others in your organization also know them? Well, I think Pat Plant knows people on that. I'm pretty sure. And I'm pretty sure Marie Bernard knows some of these people. So I'm going to put their names here, okay? How aware are these members? So, well, they're here, so I'm thinking they're really aware. But you might have people that aren't here today that live in Sunnyvale that you want to make sure they're coming, right? So what if they live in Sunnyvale, but they don't know that you're coming there, but they're very active in Step Up and something else? And how do they connect? Are they coming to the meetings? Are they sort of connected? And so you want to know from the Sunnyvale City Council, how many do you know? How many people from here know about you? And then, do you think any of these 7 people know who you are as well? That's sort of the second line. So, does Tony Spitaleri know who Step Up is and that you're coming? I don't know. Does he? How well does he know? Who knows what? Okay? Does that help you? So let's break up 6 minutes. You lucked out.
Was going to meet with home. So my job was to and for me, the advantage is that I can use
It wouldn't cover her agencies where she lives, and there's another different coalition that does.
Right. Well, I mean, it's
Okay, so as I was walking around, some of you don't know anybody at all on the Sunnyvale City Council, which is fine, because you're going to be there a while. Okay, but because if you're going to do this work, you're gonna be, in Sunnyvale. I'm going to say you've been there about almost a year. You got a little, we know minimum wage is on next year's study session, and then of course that'll be put off for another year before they implement it. So that's 3 years guaranteed right there. And so you'll be there for a while, so this is good. Who do you know? Yep.
Tony.
Tony.
Who is the mayor?
He's the mayor now, right?
The mayor now.
What happens in November? No Tony. No Tony. He's not on the... He can't run again. He's already done 2 terms. Okay. Who else do you know?
I know Moynan. Christopher.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's good, but what happens to Christopher and?
He's gone.
Yeah, he's gonna be out.
No, Christopher. Christopher can't run again.
No.
Sorry. It's just important to know, right? Because you're not going there by November. You're not going to get done by November. Is it going to get done, any of them?
Payday will.
Payday will? Okay,
We go
payday
to
will.
council in September.
Okay, so that's good to know. Who else do you know? Or what else do you know? Yep.
I know Myering, Davis, and Martin Millius.
You know Myring?
I'm not sure whether it's advantage or
Okay. Do you think we can move this guy over here?
No.
No way! No way, no way. Who else you know?
LinkedIn,
Davis.
can you use
Whedon.
LinkedIn to say, who do I know?
Oh, that's a good idea. I had never thought about that. What a great idea.
Hey, John, you made it.
Okay, so somebody knows Jim Davis. That's good. Is it possible over here? Oh man, we still don't know.
But David Whittam.
David
He's
Whittam.
open-minded. We had a meeting with him. He was, and he's going to be there for a while. So hopefully he will hear us for the minimum wage.
Okay,
He
so
could
he's
be a
a,
champion.
maybe.
I think. Yeah.
okay, so he's a physics and math person. So what are for sure you're going to have it together?
You have to have your stats right.
You're going to have your shit together, right?
Yes.
He's going to want to know all your stats.
Uh-huh.
And all your data. So, we talked all about that research. You're going to have that in spades from
Yeah.
Mr. Whittam, right?
Yeah.
If he's a serious Rotarian also, then there's potential for that kind of humanistic support for this cause as well.
So this guy is a Rotarian. Good connection.
And
Okay.
he is a supporter of the Morgan Autism Center to have a space in Sunnyvale. And he has a plan for how that's going to look like. So he really has some social mission. He is driven by some mission and personal for him.
Good to know.
Who's the elected official that would, is that at this point, shall we ask ourselves who will be the like Congress people or assembly member?
But right now, this is all the city decides.
The city.
Okay. Oh,
It's a
okay.
city
But
decision.
there is no way to measure.
Well, yeah, we're not getting to that yet because they've first got to get somebody here.
Okay.
Okay. What about Tara Martin Millis? Anybody know her?
I do.
And where is she?
She is very progressive.
She's very what?
Progressive.
Progressive. Did you see where she lives? She lives in the San Miguel neighborhood. Oh, those people, that neighborhood, the most impacted by payday lending and minimum wage. I picked that out of her thing because San Miguel, on the other side of El Camino, they're the people she lives around most impacted. So a champion or sympathetic, huh? Maybe?
She owns her own business, I don't know if that's a good idea.
And we talked about Jim Davis, but we didn't move him anywhere, did we? We're missing one. Who do we missing? Tony Griffith. What about him? What about him? Oh boy. Okay. So you guys are picking a tough city here, right? Because we didn't move people over here thinking, oh, we got a lot of help. So
You can kind of tell by their former or present occupations. You can I'm not stereotyping, but you can kind of tell by their
you
background.
can't you? I had fun doing this yesterday. But guess what opportunity you have? The election. So what could you do about that now?
Work for a candidate who's in
Yes!
favor of this issue.
But not your nonprofit.
You can do a candidate. You can start with a candidate forum for Sunnyvale,
Yeah.
right? Because you want to ask them at that forum to support your two issues. You're going to bring them together, and you're going to say, "We want your support for payday lending and minimum wage." That's what you're there to talk to them about. You're going to do it before they get elected. election impact. You have an opportunity now because September, you're hoping, it might happen, could get delayed. Life's full of delays in government. I hope it doesn't happen, but you never know. Candidate forum. And then what else are you going to do? Got to get to know the candidates. So I don't know from this list of candidates, because I didn't do my research yet, are any of them going to be good for you or bad for you? Like I don't know Andy Frazier and Gustav Larsson. He's running for Tony's seat. And seat 2 is Steve Hoffman, Glenn Hendricks, and Gustava Magna. I don't know them. I have to do it up. And then in seat 3, Jim Griffin is running again. Oh, but we didn't put him over here. And he's running against somebody named Tappan Mayer. So, for you guys to get to know Sunnyvale better, you might want to put this on your agenda before November to do a candidates forum in Sunnyvale. Because I can tell you the council's not, we don't do those small cities at all. So I think it'd be a great idea if you all could look at that. And this is going to help you get to know the candidates and start to push your issues now. You have an opportunity. So whatever issue you're moving, you're going to do this. And then the next thing I do is, who are the blocks? Tony votes with Griffin, and who else does he vote with? I don't know. Maybe Jim Davis sometimes, I don't know.
I mean, Christopher,
I'd want to know. And
he's been a block for a lot of agenda for safety.
But this guy, the Meyerling person, oh no, sorry. That was a mistake, wasn't it? He has his own block. You can read all about him in the newspaper. There's tons of articles. Get to know who he is. Really get to know who he is. Okay? Why? Because remember, when I did the research, you need to know about the pros and you need to know about the cons. Right? So just as much as you want a champion to speak for your issue, you got to know which one of these people might be speaking against you and why. I'd check out this guy. I don't know. I just did my little research yesterday, but I'd be all over him. Because you don't want him to use his time speaking against you over and over and over and over and over again if you don't have one of these people ready to go on the other side. Got to have it ready to go on the other side so that it's ready to go. Just saying, in Sunnyvale. Who were the spokespeople for you in payday lending? Who are your champions now?
So Griffith and Davis both came forward early on in support of the issue. Since then, it hasn't come before the city council again. We've met with all of the members, and all of the members have said they will support restrictions on payday lenders in Sunnyvale.
Well, that's good.
Patricia, from our experience asking for a safety net funding, Griffith, he's very outspoken and he takes over. And that's been our experience, that he's on board and some of the others tend to lean on.
So Griffith's really important over
Yeah,
here.
and he attends even the housing commission meeting, so he is all over. Like, he would start with the funding from the basic, right? When the commissions are making decisions, he comes to all those meetings. So he's very influential.
And he lives in that Danbury Sutton neighborhood on the opposite side of town.
That's been our experiences. As I see him, his personality is he comes prepared and then he'll take over.
There's only a little problem with, oh yeah, he is running again. He's seat 3. So he stays. Good to know. So, have you invited Mr. Griffith to a meet and greet with all of you? I would be spending some time with Mr. Griffith because he is going to be there after November unless he gets unelected. And I don't know anything about this person running against him, if they're part of that slate, an opposite slate or what. So, have you added them to their email list? Are they getting your mailings?
They get the step-up meeting, the step-up in the information, all of them.
Okay. But are they getting the right information or just your regular emails? So I think you might want to look at that, right? Because they get lots of stuff, and I'll have to say I get a lot of stuff from Step Up, and I'm so sorry. I don't read it all. Personal emails from a person, like if Marie Bernard or Almaz, who lives in Sunnyvale, or Pat Plant, or somebody else, sends a personal email to Jim Griffith to say, I'm involved in Step Up, and I'd really want to make sure you read this newsletter. That will get read. Okay? But if you just send the blanket stuff, so let's tighten up your communication strategy now. How do you communicate with them? So more personal emails, more personal notes, because guess what? Advocacy isn't a whole lot different than fundraising. It's people to people. It's really not a whole lot of difference. The other thing that I would look at in Sunnyvale are the formers. So where's Diane McKenna? Where's Larry Stone? Where's Pat Castillo? Well, you know where I'm going with this. You could get it would be great if you could get some of those early people to support you now. And then when you meet with them, you say, we have the support of former council members such as former Chamber of Commerce leaders, other community leaders. Get prepared. Get prepared here.
I think the other thing to remind yourself of is like, who doesn't like, who do you use and with who, right? So say if Stone really hates Griffith and they hate each other, you're not going to say, hey, yeah, look at this guy. He's
good point.
Bring him in.
That's a good point.
And then even thinking about like the champions with Whitman Millis, thinking about
Millis, I think her name is.
Who's the strong enough person
Who
to
should
carry
go?
it through?
Who? It's the who. So if Griffith is one of your champions, who are your point people for that person? Who? And not 20 of you, but who are the two people that you want to be that person? Who is this? Who is this? Who are they? Really take your list up and divide it, right? And get your list together. Who do you know? Because at the end of the day, I used to have this in my office. You need what? 4 votes out of 7. If you can't count to 4, don't bring it to the council. Delay it. Ask for, don't go. Don't go. If you're not sure you've got 4 votes, get one of your champions to delay it till you can get them. Till after the election, till another study session, till you do something. I love the delay word if I don't have it already. Don't feel like the timeline is the date, because if you lose, guess what? It's another 3 years. And then it's really tough. Yep.
Any idea about piggybacking with an issue that's really key to a district? Like, for example, we're trying to develop the Moffett Field and use results from San Francisco and San Jose to show that increasing the minimum wage has actually been a positive for business development, for the economic.
Right. Now remember, this comes after you've done what we just talked about a few minutes ago, which is your research and your talking points, your 3 talking points, because you're going to use those talking points when you go meet here. So you've already done all that work. You've done the research about San Francisco and San Jose. You've got it memorized. You know the data. You know who's with you, know who's against you. You've already done all that. And now you're ready to go talk, right? Because don't go talk until you did what we just talked about. This is step 2 here.
No, what my point was, like with Tony, is he a real strong champion for the Moffett Field redevelopment? And if he is, then you're aligning how increase in minimum wage could help the Moffett Field.
Right. But what did I put top of the list here? He's a union guy, heart and soul, head to toe. in and out. So he's going to be all over the minimum wage, right? He should be anyway. Okay, so you've got to do that. But then there's another thing. I think we'll just do it all together because everybody doesn't know everybody here. Who would be, so we look at then as who are your key constituencies? It's another little matrix that I use here, right? And that's really defining the partners. Remember we talked about if only one person talked about seatbelt laws, we wouldn't have any. We just wouldn't have it. Wouldn't work that way. So somebody in your group is going to keep working on this. We didn't finish it today, but it gives you an idea that whoever the working group is for Sunnyvale, you got to have a little plan of action here. But let's talk a little bit about who you know. Who are your key stakeholders that you could partner with? So who are the partners you want to work with and care about? We're still in Sunnyvale now. We're still in Sunnyvale. Goes however you want, but we're still in Sunnyvale. So who are the key people in Sunnyvale you want to make sure they know that you all are coming to talk about minimum wage and payday lending and get their support too? Who are they? I'll help you. Sunnyvale Community Services for sure, right? West Valley too, because they're right there, right next to them. Nova. That's a government entity. They probably can't take a position, but you can go talk to them. Maybe they got some stats that will help you on how the minimum wage would impact you, right? Because they're an employment program. And boy, of course, you get stats from the city of Sunnyvale for the city of Sunnyvale. That'd be helpful. Okay, who else?
Churches are organized in Sunnyvale. They all belong to an organization called Sunnyvale Cares. And this ought to be an issue that they are very interested in.
Okay, who else?
Downtown Streets team.
Okay, who else?
If there's a why, they're sometimes partners.
There's a why there?
If there is, I don't know. I don't live in Sunnyvale.
No, there is no.
No why?
No.
Okay.
What about the chamber?
How about the school, like the PTA and the PTSA?
So you're not going to go talk to them? I'm going to put them on the list, and I'll tell you why. Because remember that pros and cons thing. So the hardest meeting I had on minimum wage is I was assigned to go talk to the Chamber of Commerce about why we were going to support the minimum wage. I knew full well that they weren't going to be with me. But they were saying that nonprofits were those most hurt by the minimum wage. And our study said that that was not true. And if you recall, through the campaign, our stuff was used over and over again because we proved that nonprofits were not harmed by the minimum wage. If you don't tell the Sunnyvale Chamber of Commerce that nonprofits are not harmed by the minimum wage, they will use the same tactic. Nonprofits are not harmed. Use my study over and over and over and over again. You got to tell them. That might not be the first person you go to meet.
Yeah.
But you got to go.
She's reached out to them, to
I know.
the Chamber and the Rotary Club.
Oh, Rotary, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But don't forget, go to meet. Rotary, who else?
Kiwanis and all those clubs.
Kiwanis.
Kiwanis Club.
I would not put like chamber under partners, but maybe put under damage control. Because you know they're never going to say they're in favor of it. But I agree that you need to meet with them and blunt any negative that they would promote.
Yeah, they're not your first group, probably.
But will they ever be a partner though? They probably never will.
So part of it is who in Sunnyvale has gone through poverty simulation from the business.
Oh,
yeah, that's a good one.
Anybody that's on our list has gone through poverty simulation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Including simulations that are sponsored by the chamber.
Which I know.
very good. Okay, so there's a okay, so you see where I'm going here, right? You got, because I can guarantee you, if just you 20 people, and some of you are going to hang with us, and some of you are not going to be in the movement on these two issues, it won't work. So you need to take this list, and you need to assign First of all, you got to learn who they are, so it's the same thing. Sunnyvale Community Services, they've already come out and supported minimum wage, so no problem, but can we use your name? Now. West Valley, they've already supported, can we use your name? Got to double check,
Yeah.
Nova, what are you going to get from them? How are you going to use it? Who's your best contact over there? Is Chris still there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so there's official information, and let's see what else you can get from them, if I made myself clear. Churches, who's going to help? Oh, come on, you got the perfect person, right? But you've got to get ready for them, right? And then you've got to have, what is it that you're asking them to do with you, right? Are you going to ask them to what? Come to the city council meeting? Are you going to ask them to come with you to meet with people? So let's say the Kiwanis, let's say the Kiwanis support minimum wage, or somebody in the Kiwanis does. Well, that'd be, somebody over here is a Kiwana. That'd be a good person to take to that meeting. So you want to look at who you're partnering with, because you're not going to do it by yourself. And if Step Up's the lead, or Law Foundation is the lead, or is Working Partnerships the lead, you got to do this together. But there are a lot of worker bees that happen. I think Working Partnerships is still a lead in Sunnyvale on minimum wage. But how are you going to work with them on that? Because you've got people probably in this group, and this group, and this group, and this group that can help them. They might not know. They're kind of like me. We don't necessarily have all the contacts in all the small cities.
Patricia, how important is it that the point person either lives or works in the city that you're thinking about? Because I know in Palo Alto, the first thing everybody does is says, I went to elementary school here, and then I went here, and then I went to Stanford, and then I did this, right? Like, it's like what they're using is their way of saying I have political power or I have connections or something. And I'm just curious, like, is it smart to have Sunnyvale Community Services being the person who's a point stronger than Step Up being a point, or does it matter?
It's relationship based. It's just like major gift giving. It's really not any different. It's people asking people. So when I went to my great meeting with the chamber to tell them that nonprofits were not impacted by the minimum wage, I took one of the chamber board members with me. Helped. We didn't yell at each other then, probably.
But how many voters you can move doesn't necessarily matter.
I think it's the who more than the who, the person.
Okay.
So Step Up is a coalition of lots of people, right? Like these people are part of Step Up.
Mm-hmm.
So how you decide to frame it is Step Up, and I think that's the question you all have. Are you going there as Step Up? So for the council, for example, right, we're a coalition. When you come with a meeting for me, you are there as a representative of the council. That's why you're there. Now, you might have a personal example that works for your agency. Greg does lots of meetings, so we go on behalf of all of us, right? And I have a little list. This is all of us. There's 200 names on there. And Greg might give an example of this is how it impacted us at Washington Center or wherever we are. Catholic Charities has some issue there. But we go to talk about all of us. So all of Step Up is supporting of the minimum wage. And within Step Up, we have these people supporting us. And remember, you're going to do that in coalition. You're not the only partner. Your partner is here, but you have another partner over here. So don't forget them. Okay? Just like in payday lending, it's the Law Foundation. Yeah.
I do think when you're picking a particular messenger to go to city council, if it's somebody who lives in that community and is a constituent, they should say, I live in your community and I'm a constituent. So I do think that they sort of sit a little straighter and pay a little bit more attention if they're hearing from a voter who can impact their election.
But you want to spend some time within yours, because what you can offer Working Partnerships or the Loud Foundation is what's your depth in the city of Sunnyvale. That's what you have that they might not have. And that's what you bring to the table. But you better know what your depth is and who they are. because you can't offer them up if they're not in on the program. So we look at that, and then I'm just gonna I have a little matrix here, but we'll just walk it through. So, for example, we'll use the church, Sunnyvale Cares, for example. Do you know them personally? Well, we know Pat does for sure, right? Can she make the introduction? Yes. You know, what's the goal? What do you want from the Council on Churches? What do you want them to do? So, for the Council on Churches, what is it that you want them to do?
They could sponsor a candidate's night.
Oh, they could sponsor a candidate. A different one or with you?
No, I don't know.
You don't know yet. Okay. Okay.
But they represent thousands of people, so they would.
So that would be good.
A lot of those people would come to the candidate's night.
But it would only be good if they did what? Asked you 2 questions. So if they have a candidates form and they don't ask about minimum wage and payday lending, you have not achieved your goal. So just to add to that, this is a great idea, but you'll help work on it, but you got to have questions on minimum wage and payday lending.
That would be the point.
That would be the point, right? I'm sure there's other issues in Sunnyvale, right? There's a number of other ballot initiatives for Sunnyvale. I think there's a gun control one. My scariest meeting was in the mid-'70s at Fremont High School when Diane McKenna and Lynn Brody tried to first have the anti-gun control lobby. Oh, that was a scary meeting. But there's some other issues also on the ballot in Sunnyvale, right? So you want to deal with that. Okay, so you want them to do a candidates form, and then what else do you want them to do? Don't they all have bulletins?
No.
Well, that would be a lot of people to educate about the minimum wage. Just educate them. That's all you need them to do right now. Educate. They don't have to take a position yet if they're not ready, but they can provide some information. Those bulletins, wow, how many people would you get to in Sunnyvale if you started talking about that? What else? Is there anything else that you could ask a church to do?
No.
What would success look like if they partnered with you?
They can have you speak at their Sunday.
Yeah, you can have an adult education thing.
You could have a table.
Yeah.
I mean, the Sunnyvale Presbyterian Church would allow you if they feel this is something they care about and they can influence the members.
So if you were to, in a year from now, or by November, let's just go to November for right now, what would success look like if you could get the Sunnyvale Cares to participate with you? What are the 2 or 3, what are 3 things, because I like that number 3, what are 3 things, if they did these 3 things, you would be so happy, what would they be?
So priests they have the power of the pulpit. They have this captive audience that they get to send a message to, and if it's related to social justice, and if you have an ally in the priest or whoever's doing the lecture related to social justice and equity and poverty, then I think they can send that message.
So if how many churches or faith groups do you think are in Sunnyvale Cares?
15, 17.
15. Okay. How many of them would need to have taken that step for you to be happy? If 5 did it, would that be a good number?
Okay. Yeah.
Huh? 5?
It's 4 Catholic churches, so just the Catholics would be
A lot. Yeah, but remember, each priest beats to his own drummer. If you're not well aware, Greg and I will share that news with you. They all have their own plan. They're all they don't necessarily. And I don't believe the bishop did come out with some sort of a piece around the minimum wage, but I don't believe he personally took a position on behalf of the church, or did he? He took a personal position. Okay. All right, so that's good to know.
Would it depend on membership? Like the larger churches would have more weight, or it's a matter of number of...
I'm asking you, what would success look like?
Where do the council members go to church?
Ah, okay.
Who's their
Okay, okay, well, that's a good one.
Who do they listen to? And who funds them?
Yeah.
Who's the
Just on
donor?
behalf of the Catholics, we did get the bishop to send a support letter to the Sunnyvale community, to the Sunnyvale Council.
Okay, so would success be, would everyone just be happy if only the Catholics talked about it?
Oh, no.
No. Okay, so I'm just reminding you, the question is, what would success look like? So maybe success would look like you get 3 other faiths beyond the Catholic Church.
Yes.
Okay.
Variety of support.
Okay, so apparently we feel that we can get to the Catholic Church, but I'm going to say that there's no guarantee that all 4 of those priests, I'll tell you right now, are going to do this. But we'll put them down. Catholic Church plus 3? Plus 4?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do plus 4. So if we could get the Catholic Church, there's 4 parishes there, so let's just say you're going to get 2 parishes. That'd be pretty good. You get half of them. Plus 4 are going to somehow educate the masses. Okay, but is it okay if some of them do it through their bulletin and some of them do it in the? Is that going to be okay for you? So it's not like you have to get them to speak about it on Sunday or
That's too passive.
Saturday
No,
or Friday.
That would not be good enough for me.
It would not be good enough for you.
No way.
You want part of the. You want it to be part of something.
To be able to have a forum there at their particular,
Okay, so let's drill that down. Lots of ways to do that, right?
Sure.
There's lots of ways to do it. So there's a bulletin. There's a table at an event. There would be an announcement. So Almaz goes to St. Martin's, and she's given that time at the end of the service. And they say, I'm here from Step Up, and I want to let you know about the minimum wage today. It's in church. Maybe not the priest. Would that be okay? Maybe.
Promotion by, if they have a social justice committee, acted on by them somehow.
Okay, so you can see that when we just took one partner and we carry it through, it's kind of a lot of work, right? Right? So, and we only did one for the purposes of today. But if you say, okay, we're going to, so a lot of times, I'm sure you've said in fundraising meetings, and somebody will say, oh, let's get Angelina Jolie to our event. You ever had one of those, some out of the blue, everybody wants, oh yeah, how are you going to get them? Well, when you work it down here, Angelina Jolie doesn't kind of make it all the way over here. So it's the same process, right? If you're going to get them, what's success going to look like, right? The success, you've identified your success is that you're going to get at least 2 of the Catholic parishes plus 4 others. If you do better than that, you're going to be happy, right? Are going to educate the masses within their congregations. And there's lots of ways that you're going to do that. Right, so we'll just take it for one more step. So you go to the meeting. There's going to be some people who perk up when you talk, right? Those are the 6 people you're going to talk to later. The other ones, you let them go. Just let them go. Because why? Somebody said earlier, we started with 30, and by the time we were done, we only had 6. That's why. That's why you let them go. Because you just can't do it all. And so you just pick those 6. You've said 6 would be a good number. Just pay attention to those 6. That's all you want to do. If it goes to year 2, you can go pick up another 6. But just stay with a doable number. And you know what? If you can't do 6 because you don't know 6 people that know those 6 people that are going to carry it through, then just move your number down. But don't spread it so that at least somebody didn't do this, right? You gave up sort of here. You got to kind of move it through. So those are the kinds of things that I want you to think about when you move advocacy, right? And all these pieces go together. They're not separate pieces and you're done, right? The first piece, the research, the talking points, the communication strategy. The second, I'd learned who are the people, And remember, this works the same. We could have done the same exercise with the homeless in Cubberley. Look at all those, same thing. Who are the people? Who are your partners? How are you going to work them? And what does success look like? So, ultimately success is the passage of the ordinance, right? That's the ultimate success. But there's lots. You just don't get to go from there to there, or it wouldn't take 3 years. And I'd be out of a job. So this is the ultimate goal right here. That's where you're really headed. But to do that, you've got to build and build and build and build. That's why it's called advocacy. And just remember the 2 things. It's their goal to get you down. And you're going to do what? You're going to still do it tomorrow. That's the most important thing, because sometimes you leave, oh man, we worked so hard and we didn't get the prize. And it's okay to feel sorry for yourself for a while, but then you got to say, I'm going to come back and do it again tomorrow. Because if you don't come back and do it tomorrow, then what happens? Nothing happens. Nothing changes. And it is, and so it is, advocacy sometimes is survival of the fittest. For those advocacy efforts, for the energy waned and waned. They had a great idea, but they didn't have the momentum. The great thing about Step Up is you've got people, you've got momentum, but use them in a way that they're a success. Because if we don't have little successes along the way, people give up. People give up if they don't see some progress.
Yeah.
So I joined in Palo Alto, that situation, very late, and I noticed how tired and worn out those people who have been fighting that battle for such a long time. But so it's good to bring in new people, bring in new people who aren't worn out yet. And the other thing was the neighborhood groups. I mean, it was predictable that the neighborhood groups, which are very strong, like each neighborhood is sort of organized. I don't know if it's the same case in Sunnyvale, but it was pretty obvious to me that they were going to be having here at the city council in a big way, because it was the impact on them, and it affects their election.
It affects them, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you were asking me, I think the advantage.
Does anybody have any questions? Was it overwhelming? It wasn't. Do you feel like it's doable now? These little steps along the way get you there? Okay, so I just want to remind you all, after you do step 1, don't give up. Research, that's not the end. You're here for the long haul. We all have long lives ahead of us. What else are we going to do with our time? But it's very important to have a conversation with yourself about how far, how much, how long. And it's okay sometimes people feel like, I met with a group the other day, she goes, well, I just haven't been in a long time. I feel bad about going back. So I want to give you permission, if you've bowed out for a while, it's okay to come back in when you're ready, because it is a journey. And sometimes people have to leave for a lot of reasons. They have kids, their parents, whatever they are. But don't feel like you can't ever come back. And I think that's one of the things Step Up might really want to think about, is that there are people that were involved that have stepped out. How do you allow them to step in again at different points in time? Because it's a long road. And they came with you because you were working on this, and that's not their issue anymore. But maybe on another issue you re-engage. So look at your mailing list, divide it by areas, get some coding, get some Sunnyvale people. Look at how people want to be involved. And the best of luck in the work that you're doing. Go out there and fight the good fight.
Thank you.